Hi, everyone. My guest today, Jenny Lynn, is a hypno-psychotherapist back with us for the second time. When I first interviewed her a while back, she just wanted to share her recovery insights before retiring to help ensure that this information was available to people who need it. But after that wildly popular interview, she was flooded with requests for more information and support, so much so that I have her back today to share more about her approach, rooted in self-compassion, that resonated deeply with so many people. If you're new here, I'm Raelan Agle, back with another inspiring interview. Each week, I share resources for ME, CFS and Long Covid recovery to make sure you have the best and most current recovery information possible. It's so exciting to hear how people recover from conditions like ME, CFS and Long Covid, but even more exciting is talking to someone like my guest today over in Essex, UK, who has helped enable hundreds of recoveries with her work as a therapist. So let's dive in and welcome Jenny back to the channel. Jenny, amazing to have you back. Thanks for being here.
Oh, a real pleasure. There's so much to tell you.
Oh my goodness, what a whirlwind since the last time you were here.
Absolutely, it just went mad. As you know, you made great attempts to tell everyone I was retired, but obviously the universe thought otherwise. So I'm not retired anymore.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, well, you can't come out with such great information and expect to just slink away. No, Jenny, come back.
I could do a hit and run.
We need you.
Yeah.
It's like a daily thing for me. So, suffice it to say, you had a long health journey. You get it. You've been there. And like virtually everyone I've talked to, it's been a process of internal transformation to get where you are now. Yeah, definitely in a good place.
Yeah.
So you have been working with a lot of clients, helping a lot of people. So can you share any common themes that you're seeing in your work?
So I've seen loads and loads of clients all together, and literally one after the other, we're talking 20 clients a week, one after the other are telling me the same story. And one of the things that comes up regularly is I'm not very good with boundaries, with setting boundaries. And as I've listened more to where the difficulties are with setting boundaries, it's because they don't value themselves. You don't put a boundary around something that's not worth anything. You know, you have to value yourself and then you can put your boundaries in place. So that's been a real theme. If you don't value, if you don't recognise your unique voice, then you can't defend it. So boundaries are academic. People know they need them, but they don't know what that means to have them. They don't understand the link between your own voice and your own sense of self and your boundary. So, and I think what happens with boundaries is people feel very selfish. You know, if I set a boundary, oh, who am I? Who am I to want something from somebody else? You know, who am I to stake out my territory and say, this is where I am? Who am I to do that? You know, but the paradox is if you don't do that, people have to guess who you are. And people are full of projections and rubbish. So they'll project anything onto you that might be their own stuff from goodness knows when. So you just then become the recipient of other people's stuff. So actually, you're doing yourself a massive disservice if you think you're being selfish by asking for what you need. Because how else do people know who you are? Does that make sense to you?
Oh my goodness, so much sense. It's just light bulbs going off all over the place. And we always hear we need to have boundaries, and it just feels like a task that you need to do, but that's not the starting place.
No.
It makes so much sense.
So the journey is into your heart. It's into finding your voice. It's into feeling at ease and comfortable with saying what you need, what you want. Finding your voice, this is another theme that's coming up, the voice thing, is finding your voice isn't about shouting at the world, this is me, I've arrived. It's really about knowing who you are and knowing it's all right to be you. I have a voice. My voice is my intention in my life. It's what I project into the world. That's my voice. It can take word form, obviously, but it's more about just being at ease and comfortable with yourself and knowing that if you want something, you can go for it. And if you don't, you can say no. So it's that easiness with just your own voice, and not letting your voice be those of your parents or your caregivers. That's them. That's not you. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. I'm not saying, oh, shake yourself out of this, But the journey is into your heart, is finding your voice, making sure you've got one, making sure that you honour yourself. And what we're actually looking for, this is another theme that's coming up, is we're looking for behaviour change, because you can't just change your thoughts. You can. It will help. But if you don't understand what's generating your thoughts, if you don't understand the deeper layers of it, then your potential to keep returning to that is higher than if you don't understand where your thoughts are generated from, So when we're looking at behaviour change, this is about finding your voice. We're looking at what happens differently in your life and around you when you find your voice. What happens differently? And what I'm noticing, when people find their voice, they directly say to me, more than once, I've had this probably half a dozen or more times, now I know what's going on inside me. When I get symptoms, I know I'm hiding out somewhere. So I just have to sort of say, what am I not seeing? What do I not want to know? What is it that I'm hiding from? What am I afraid of? What's going on? Where's my voice? And straight away, people can bring themselves home again. It's bringing yourself home. This is your body, it's your life, it's your voice. No one can do that for you. As much as we love the NHS in our country and, goodness knows whoever else, a psychiatrist or whatever, to look after us, they've got a role, but they're not you. They don't know you. So, so the voice thing is a big theme. The other thing that's coming up is, everyone is different. And my skill, if you like, is meeting those people where they are. Sometimes that takes a couple of sessions to calibrate to that person, because they might be more cognitive, more headlocked, or they might be more visual or metaphorical. And they've all got a different way of expressing themselves. So I have to calibrate to that and find ways of reaching into their life to make a difference. So the theme there is that, I suppose that, they all want the same thing. We all want to come home. It's a bit like that idea of soul splitting. If you go through a trauma, parts of you split off. And we want to bring those parts home. Stop keeping them out in the cold, They need to be home with you. And I think, regardless of what style somebody is, we have to bring them home. We have to be more heart-centred and less brain-centred. As we know, like, all of our worries are in our brain, they're fantasies. Most of the time, our fight-flight response is a natural survival strategy, but it shouldn't be on all of the time, Easy said, obviously, because part of the brain retraining that everyone's telling me about is about down-regulating the brain so that it's not putting you in alarm all the time, which is great, fabulous. So that's that. What else have I got? I've got loads of themes. Finding a voice, forbidden feelings. Okay, there's another one, forbidden feelings. And this goes on with my next one, which is called Stockholm Syndrome. So anyone who knows what Stockholm Syndrome is, I'll just briefly explain that there was a bank robbery in Stockholm, and the robbers, got everyone in the bank, held them hostage. And over a period of days, the hostages started to sympathise with the bank robbers, and they started to protect them and defend them, and they started to, they thought it was quite legitimate what they were doing, even though their own lives were at stake. And what you're finding sometimes, this isn't with everyone, but I'm finding with some people that there's this sort of tendency to want to defend their childhood, to say it wasn't as bad as all of that, and so on and so forth, to think their parents must have loved them. Surely they couldn't have really intended any bad. And so there's this defending of the indefensible, really. Now, when I say indefensible, I don't mean that these parents have been terribly heinous or aggressive or unkind or traumatic. Some people have been. But this desire not to break ranks with them, because in fact you're still quite childlike in your outlook on life. So I can't break ranks. I can't be separate to my parents, because that represents an existential threat to me, which it would have done when you were young, but not now. So what I've done with half a dozen or more clients is create that space between their parents and them. This isn't a blame game. I don't want them to hate them. I'm a parent. We all suffer. Parents all suffer with, guilt complexes about their kids. So I'm not seeking to demonise a parent. I'm simply seeking to get them to separate so they can see more clearly what they went through. And the fact that their parents were deficient. We all are. We've all got our failings. But the best thing we can do is take charge of our own lives and stop waiting for our parents to be somebody that they never will be and never could be. And I think that is a massive theme that's coming out with a lot of people. And the forbidden feelings is this kind of like, I don't do negative feelings, I just don't do them. Love and light, I want to go, I want to just be on the positive side. But unfortunately, the work is where the negative feelings are stored in the body. And so there's a lot of anger that gets stored in the body, and there's a fear of anger, a fear of fear itself. And I think, like learning how to express anger is the most important thing you can do. That doesn't mean outbursts and rage and confrontation. It just means being at ease with your voice and learning how to defend yourself appropriately and, speak. Let anger be the motivator, not the out of control emotion that we associate with anger. So that's been quite a theme.
I love all of this. And for those of us that are, like you and myself and many of our viewers who are doing a deep dive on understanding how all of this is connected, this is all very helpful to hear. But for someone who isn't there on their journey yet and they're thinking, I have long COVID, or I had some kind of reaction to a vaccine, or I just got diagnosed with ME CFS, what does any of this have to do with my illness? How is this making me recover from being sick?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think those people probably wouldn't come to me because the people that come to me are already ready to work through the blocks and the issues that they know go a lot deeper than just the conscious mind. But I think if you can understand that every emotion that we express has a charge, anger, fear, frustration, sadness, loss, it all has a charge. It has a charge in the body. And if you don't acknowledge the charge and you don't express it, you store it. Now, any mind-body book, there's loads, can't even remember the names now, I've got them all on the bookshelf. All of those mind-body books will tell you about a lack of expression equals depression. If you can't express the forbidden stuff, it's going to store in the body. It's as simple as that. So that's why it's relevant. If that isn't easily understood, that's where I can't help. If you're not ready to take that leap, it's very hard for me to convince you that that's the way to go. In fact, I would advise go down the brain retraining route, go down the Harold Schubner route, go down other routes, because unless you're ready to look at it, it's a mystery, isn't it? And there are some people that just don't get it. And that's fine. Life is a journey. I'm not here for everyone. I would hate that responsibility. Do you know what I mean? To have everyone's solution. I don't. But I do have a lot of help and insight I can offer people that are ready to do that work. So I don't know if that answers the question, because it's not easy for me to answer that. Do you know what I mean? What does it have to do with the body? All you can say, let's say, for example, when you get anxious, you go to the loo. So first thing, like if you've got an anxious tummy, you just want to sit on the loo all the time. So you're telling me then that your anxiety is not creating that physical response? Of course it is. Everyone knows that. We know that when we're anxious, we create symptoms in the body. The thing with ME chronic fatigue is we deny the symptoms. We deny the emotions because they're too dangerous to feel. And I wanted to talk about this, actually. This is a document that came out millennia ago, probably 30 odd years ago, that I used originally to see what was going on in the mainstream, because I don't know what was going on in the mainstream. I was just getting clients through. But these people, they're called Action for ME, they're a UK-based group. They were determined to try and get some insight into what was going on from the mainstream, so to speak. Do you know what I mean? There's been so much stigma around chronic fatigue ME over decades that the idea that your mind and your body are linked in any way, shape or form, or that your emotions even inform what's going on in your body, has been separated. Modern medicine has separated those out. They've separated the mind from the body. All of these isms and ologies that have separated everything have made life so complex, when if we just knew how to tune in with ourselves and really come to peace inside, then probably 90% of all our problems would be solved. But this one, the one thing I wanted to note in here was it says those people that took cognitive behavioural therapy, 67% said it made no difference and 26% said it made it worse. This is cognitive behavioural therapy, and only 7% said it helped. So what was going on there? That was a psychological approach to physical disease. My conjecture is that CBT is so cognitive, it's so impersonal, that it's not seeing the human being. It's not seeing the heart of that person. So unless people feel seen and witnessed, it's just techniquing. It's just stuff. Yeah. Don't know if that resonates at all, but...
Yeah, it absolutely does. I know you talk about there being a spiritual element or integrated part of your approach. So when you talk about it being spiritual, how do you define that? What does that mean?
Thanks for that. This is where I wanted to share that bit about my history as well. But the thing about spiritual is I understand it to be probably quite different from what the New Age spirituality calls itself. I would say, instead of bypassing an ego death, which a lot of New Age spirituality purports, I would say we need to strengthen the ego, strengthen it, because it is our interface in this physical realm with other people and events in our lifetime. If we have no ego, and oftentimes people with chronic fatigue have got very, very low ego, they sacrifice themselves for other people. They give up everything for other people. And that's got to stop. You need to strengthen your ego. So strengthening your ego from a spiritual perspective is about grounding yourself. It's about being here right now, not as an automaton in a stiff body, but as a fully integrated spiritual human being. And so spirituality is really about knowing who you are, where you stand in life, what you're about, hearing your own voice, speaking from your heart, coming from sometimes a pragmatic understanding of life, because it's not personal. When people have a go at you or are unkind to you, it's not about you. They've got stuff. Yeah. And when you think, everyone's getting at you or whatever, that's about you, because they're not. They're doing their life. So I find spirituality is about an evening out. It's a kind of let me have my whole voice, let me be me, whilst acknowledging that is just part of the natural order of things. That's just how it is. If we all stood in our strength, there would be no problems in the world. Yeah, but we don't. We're all partial. We've all been split off by trauma and events, and we don't know how to come home. So that's what I understand by spiritual. And when it comes to trauma, and this is very, very clear with almost everyone I've worked with, when there's been a sense of trauma, parts split off, they go away somewhere, and we have to coax them back in, and we have to sort of bring them home. Sometimes that's one session, sometimes that's 6, who knows. But my story was going back to, I wanted to share this actually, because I thought to myself, why am I attracted to working with the ME/CFS group? Because I haven't experienced ME/CFS. But when I was 23, I was schizophrenic. So I had this florid episode of schizophrenia towards the end of my degree. I was doing a degree at the time in modern languages. And I think when I look back, what was a precipitating condition for that event was the sense of utter rejection, aloneness, needing to prove something, not being good enough, trying my darndest to prove something when no one gave a damn whether I proved it or not. So there was that sort of loss of self. It just fled. It just went off. And for a number of months, I found myself in an alternative reality where I wasn't plugged into this world. This world was just not where I was. And, the experience was terrifying because you're alone. You're completely alone. So I was very fortunate because, as crazy as that time was, I managed to come out of hospital. I was in about 3 months. But when I came out, I went back to my family of origin, and they were as strict and as they would have always been. And I had to find a way. I just had to find a way. And fortunately, I was already practicing Buddhism at the time. So I just found a way. I just managed to come off the drugs. I slept for about a year because it's very exhausting going through that. And I think it's only years later that I realise I can probably feel where people are in their journey to healing because of that experience myself, that splitting off and having to bring those parts back. At the time, it was unconscious. I didn't know how I was doing it. I just knew I had to. But then during my 30s, when I did my training, there was a lot of, it was a very rigorous training and very insightful. And it just brought everything home. And, it's no coincidence then, I was in practice just a few months when I met my first ME chronic fatigue, and it just all seemed to, it's all seemed to make a lot of sense. So I think that's probably why I can recognise when people have abandoned themselves and where they've abandoned themselves and why they've abandoned themselves and bring those parts home. So yeah, is that spiritual? Yeah, I think it is. I mean, if you look at Malidoma Some, this is another amazing book, I recommend it, Of Water and the Spirit. He talks about the path to initiation, his initiation path, and what it means to be initiated. And essentially, it's about growing into yourself and leaving childhood behind. And that means taking on the mantle of being a fully fledged human being. Yeah. Whereas a lot of us don't go through an initiation process. We don't go through that rite of passage. And I think probably my schizophrenic episode was a rite of passage. I had to split from my family of origin. And that became very meaty in my 30s when I started to do a lot more exploration and realised where I had to go.
So in the work that you do with people, what does that look like? What support do you have available? What can people expect?
Well, we do a half-hour free session, and that's just to establish whether you are happy with me and I'm happy with you. There's been a number of people that have come through that obviously aren't happy. That's fine. And there's some people I've had to say, I can't help you. And I really can't, for various reasons. But essentially, depending on the person, obviously, because I have to calibrate to everyone, essentially, I would really encourage people to surrender to hypnosis. Now, it's not formal, it's not, look into my eyes, around your eyes. I'll often get somebody talking about their childhood, and then I'll just say to them, can you imagine being that child right now? And what would you say to that child? So I don't do any formal inductions. There's no major, you're relaxed, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. But it's kind of like this, I'm going to grasp the opportunity whenever I feel there's a way in. So I'm looking for the key. I'm always looking for the key to open your heart to your brain so that you can get talking again. And I talked last time about the animals. I have used that with several people. And the curious thing is you'd think, well, I've talked about it once. Oh, people be expecting to do it this way and that way. But every time I do that, something else happens. It's new. It's unusual. It's not expected. So I suppose what it looks like is I'm going to run with you. I'm going to support you. I'm going to witness you. I'm going to encourage you, inspire you. Sometimes stuff tumbles out my mouth and I think, my God, I must have channeled that because I don't know where that came from. I'll give you a few examples if you wouldn't mind me saying.
Please.
Yeah, so you model healthy self-interest so that others can emulate you, especially for your children. So if you don't have healthy self-interest, your children won't either. You become more real and authentic so that you can stand by your promises, not make promises and then try and become. Yeah. When you're real and authentic, you know what you can and you can't do. What else have I got here? You become, when you've got boundaries in place, you become more pragmatic, negotiable, and less emotionally exhausted because it's not personal. You know what you can and can't do and you're comfortable with it. So there's no, there's no agenda on that. You need other people to change less or acknowledge you less because you don't need them to acknowledge you. You can take charge of your own life. That doesn't mean you live in isolation. We're all really wanting validation from other people. But if you're dependent on it, it's a hiding to nowhere. You can regulate your own expectations, expect less from people, try to do less for people. You build a new self-respect, which inspires respect from others. If you change you, your environment has to change with you. There's just there's no way that can't happen, And the paradox is you realise you're not all powerful, and that you're comfortable with your limitations. That's really bizarre because once you realise you're not all powerful and you're comfortable with your limitations, you can achieve masses, loads more than you could have achieved when you were trying to be all powerful and trying to push beyond your limitations. Then you're just a ship without a rudder, or do you know what I mean? You're just floating around, responding to people's stuff. So, and you stop sacrificing yourself for others. Now, I don't mean, everyone else can sod off, but I think the habit with MECFS is to imagine that other people's needs are more important than yours, and they're not. They're equal to yours, and you have to negotiate your needs with other people, and see where that sits with you. Yeah. And if we all did this, we'd all be, fabulous. So I don't know. What's your thoughts? Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. The whole time you've been talking, I've just had these light bulb moments and just things going off all over the place. You explain things incredibly well. I absolutely love this. And it 100% echoes this message of what people are telling me they need to address as they work through their health recovery journeys. So I think this is incredible. Of course, this will all be linked in the description. So people watching and listening, I really encourage you to check it out because Jenny is firmly back and out of retirement. And we are so grateful for that. It is so amazing to have you here supporting people. And I'm going to link here to your first interview for people who didn't catch it. Really great insights on healing techniques and turning points in recovery. So people, if you haven't seen that, please definitely check it out. Thank you, Jenny, for being here. This has been absolutely incredible. I really appreciate you.
Oh, it's a real pleasure. It's just a pleasure to be part of your team and loosely, and to be part of the conversation. So thank you.
Amazing. And thank you to everyone for listening and watching. I'm looking forward to your thoughts and hope to see you in this first interview that I did with Jenny.